Okay, notice I'm testing the using the equal sign or the double equal sign or the equal operator here against, these are called primitive data types. Okay, so if I say another variable here, string str is equal to, apple. Okay. I'll have another one here, string bless you. Let's say we could read an input from the user. Okay, we'll have the scanner input is equal to new scanner system in. We'll also import that class, and we'll read from the input. We'll test that against a string to see if that is equal to apple. Okay, so I'm going to say output enter magic word, right? We'll make sure that equals to apple. Let's put print here instead of print line. And we're going to read that into the another variable name here. We'll call it string. Call it string2 equals the input dot next line, right? So read the string into the string2, and then we're going to test if string1 equals to string2. So we can say if string. Let's rename this as string1, so it makes more sense. So str1 is equal to apple. Let's say if string1 is equal to string2. If that is true, then we'll output both strings are equal. Okay, and we'll do the else part. Else both strings are not equal, right? Okay, so we're just going to run and test those two statements here. So remember, when you test for characters, it's case sensitive. So the big A is different from the small a because we're testing the actual Unicode for the apple, the letter A, which is I think it's like 65. Versus the lower small case a is like 90, remember 96 or 98. So that would be false. So it has to match exactly the same case. So I'm going to run this statements here, and then I'm going to put the magic word, which is apple. Hit enter, and what do we get? Since strings are not equal. How could that be? Well, let's make sure that string1 is really apple, right? So we can go back to like right here before the if block. We're going to print out the string. Actually, maybe before the read input, we're way up here in line 15. System out, I put string1, I put the value out here is equal to string1. So we'll make sure that's really apple, right? And we'll test it again. So run. So string is apple, and I'll type apple again. It's still not equal. Okay. And just to make sure it works, we'll do another one here. Number is 8, and we'll add another input here. So after that part, we'll say system out, enter a number, put a print here. And then we'll read that into a number. We'll call it int n, or just n is equal to input dot read next, right? We'll read input, right? Read integer dot next int, and then we'll compare those two integers. So the same thing. We'll say if n is equal to number, then we'll close this. System out num n is equal to number, else n is not equal to number. Okay, so very simple like that. So we'll test both strings and numbers just to make sure. Our number is 8. We can print that out also. Right above here, before we print we ask the user for the input. We'll just do another system out and put that number is equal to our number, which is okay. So let's run this. So here's our apple. If I type in apple, it's not equal. Oh, I forgot to clear that. Oh, I did. That's fine. So this is strings are not equal. The number is 8, so I'm going to enter 8. And then it says a number is equal to 8. So that works fine. But our apples are not equal, and that is the problem. Okay? So it doesn't matter what value you enter for a string, it will never be equal. Okay? And the reason why is because the integer is what we call a primitive data type. And string is actually, it is sort of, but actually here it is really not, because as you can see, string is a class, right? It's a class. So when you deal with an object, in this case, we're not testing the value of string. We're testing, when you do the double equal signs here, you're actually testing the memory address of those two variable names. And because they're two completely separate variables, they have complete different addresses, so those will never be equal. Okay? And that's kind of tricky, so just make sure you clear that part. So how do you test for equivalencies in strings? So you cannot just do this. You have to do something like, remember how you read classes last week? Objects from different class. How do you get the value of that variable?
You have to call it.
Yeah, you call a method, right? So the method will return the actual value of the string 1, string 2, and you test those values. Okay? So in that case, there is a built-in method inside strings. Here, instead of saying equal to that, let me just copy this and put it down here, and we'll comment this out. So when you test for string, you always do this way. So string 1 dot, you see equals there. Okay? If string 1 dot equals string 2. Okay, so the equals is a function, it's a method built into the string class that you can check for the actual value of those two strings. If you don't do that, if you use the double equal sign, you're actually testing the memory addresses, and they're not going to be equal. Unless you put string 1 equal to string 2, then in that case, they're pointing to the same memory location, then that'll be fine. But if you do that, then the values are not going to be checked. It doesn't matter what the value is. Both will always be equal as well. So it's a little bit tricky there. Okay, so if it doesn't matter which one you say string 2 that equals string 1 or string 1 that equals string 2, doesn't matter. You're testing now the actual values. Let me put that here as well. Let's say this is for testing, test the memory address. Here, we are testing the values of those two variables. Okay, so that's the major differences between the main difference between the two there. And so now, if you run this again, you should see that if I type in apple, and then now they're equal. Okay. So when you read an input from the user, and when we check if the password is equal to a password you set in the string, you always use the dot equals. method and not the equal signs, the double equal signs. That only works for primitive data types like booleans and numbers. Okay.